You're tuned in to Around the Lens, the internet's only live streaming roundtable discussion podcast, featuring Zach Roberts, Ron Hamilton, Travis Keys, and your host, David J. Murphy. Hello and welcome to episode 171 of Around the Lens. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Zach Roberts. Hello, Zach.
Hello, how goes it?
It goes, buddy. I say as always, but you weren't here last week, so where were you?
I believe, where was I? I think I was just way past on a writing deadline,
right.
and
Yeah.
I just needed to finish it, which I still don't think I finished it, if I remember correctly. But,
Oh, no.
I mean, it got in and
Oh,
everything.
okay, good.
No, it's not as bad as the story. I covered the Joe Biden at the Stop and Shop in Boston for the union thing, and I was working on two stories. Another story took too long because it just took longer because I had to go through some edits, and so I never got to it until I had to drive back home, which is 6 hours. And then by the time I basically got it and sent it in and had all the photos edited and everything like that, the union had come to an agreement. So the story was like basically null and void about the strike part. So I had to write an update to it. And so luckily they still took it. So I'll still get paid. So
Nice. Awesome. That's great.
Which is all it's all that matters in the end of the day.
And if any of our listeners would like to pay us or pay Zach, we have a Patreon. And Zach, what are you putting up on our Patreon exclusive, at least for the first week, for our Patreon readers?
Yeah, I have a really great interview with the co-founder of Duck Rabbit production company, a documentary production company in the UK with Ben Chesterton, and we're talking about one of the World Press Award winners who has once again he was the guy that took some very understandably controversial photos of women or very young women in India who he claimed were rape victims but actually were not, and then once again became a finalist for other photos in this year's World Press. And it's just one of those, the problems in ethics of photojournalism having to do with awards and kind of like the award bait that people just like, there are certain people that just like produce work, even though they don't ever actually see their work in publications, but somehow they produce work and they get finalists or they win these awards, which is thousands of dollars. So we had a really great conversation about that. He wrote a really great piece kind of talking about it that goes along with our interview as well.
Awesome. That's great. Well, as I said, for everything we produce, going forward, will show up first on our Patreon about a week before we put it on our website or any other platform. So if you want to be, first to know what we're thinking about everything that we're talking about, with the exception of this show, of course, which goes live every Monday and also gets published on your podcast platform of choice on Mondays, then I definitely highly recommend you throw a few bucks at us at Patreon. I think you just put as little as $1 a month and you get access to everything. So please, by all means, throw some change. We do appreciate that. Some stuff you'll see from me in the next coming weeks is I just got this bad boy right here, the Wireless Go from Rode. Nice. Really innovative lav wireless mic system. I'm really excited to use this. I don't know if you've seen any of the material being produced about it, but it basically is, like how you have those wireless lav mics that you clip onto people's belts and stuff like that. Well, this thing is like 1 inch by 1 inch square. It's like the size of a postage stamp. There's two of them, and you can actually clip the thing onto your body, and that's your mic. You don't even have to have a lav mic. It's got one built in. So really excited to check that out. And I'll also be talking about the Photocross 15 backpack in a few weeks when I get that and get a chance to get my hands on it. So again, like I said, first on Patreon, but eventually on our website and all other platforms. So, but enough with the self-promotion. Let's get on with the show. We got a great guest for us on tonight. Make sure I'm saying this right. Sarah Silbiger.
That was the easy part.
I know, right?
Silbiger.
Silbiger.
You're not the first to give it a hack job. Don't worry.
All right, great. Sarah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Right now, I am covering national politics for the New York Times here in Washington. I was totally bit by the political bug in 2016, as we were talking about earlier. And, I feel like everyone's feeling that, but I just had to be here. I ran here like it was Mecca the second I could. So I started shooting politics up in New England when, as I say, the circus came to town, 2016. And then I came down here and just started covering politics for a small industry paper called Roll Call. Not many people know what that is, but it gave me kind of an into the world here on the Hill. And then I started working for the Times, and I follow the president wherever he decides to go, which is thankfully a lot of places. I just got back from Mar-a-Lago last night, so and thankfully not jet lagged. So,
How is Mar-a-Lago this time of year?
it was actually really beautiful. He golfs every day. We wait in the library across the street and entertain ourselves, binge a bunch of movies, which I can't complain about getting paid to binge some movies.
Anything
then we
good?
hop back. I'm actually watching this show called Good Girls, and it's maybe the first network show I've watched in a decade, maybe since I don't know, since I was watching Fox for American Idol or something. So I kind of gave up on networks, but it's a really awesome show. So I watched a lot of seasons of that. And then we hop back in the motorcade and are done by around 3 or 4. And I sprint to the beach for any seconds I can have. So
Nice.
I can't complain. A lot of people don't like going there, but I'm not too far into the years covering the White House. So I still like it.
I don't know. I mean, you get paid to hang out on a fancy resort. I don't see the downside to that, really.
Well, as photographers, we can find reasons to complain about anything, truly. That is truly the theme of Washington, working in Washington, is there's always, no matter what, something to complain about.
Nice. And when you go down there, I mean, who's paying for you to cover, the president?
So the Times actually pays almost $1 million a year for a seat on the plane. There's 4 photographers that have a seat on Air Force One, and we fly down. And I oftentimes think I lose my wallet because everything is kind of all inclusive. They feed us, and everything is just billed straight to the Times, and
Wow.
there's no handouts. So there's nothing sketchy about them flying us around or anything. So yeah, our seat is definitely paid for.
Yeah, because you don't want to be necessarily on the dime of, the White House or the government, and then have that potentially
Absolutely.
be perceived, even if it doesn't, as skewing your coverage.
Exactly. Even down to the fact that on Thanksgiving, he invited us over to the club for dinner. And most people, when they had said the president would like you to join him for Thanksgiving dinner, every single writer, sometimes the photographers are not as serious about it, but the writers are, of course, they were like, no, we're not coming. And they're like, don't worry, we'll find a way to bill your organizations. But everyone was like, no, we're not going. We can't go. Because then he's going to tweet, well, I gave Thanksgiving dinner to the journalists, and, it becomes a whole thing. And that definitely becomes a headline. So
Yeah, if somebody writes the turkey was dry, he'll go fake news. Fake news.
it was pretty dry. So no, it was all good. It was one of the most wild experiences, but I can't necessarily talk about the details of it because it was off the record. So.
No, that's fine. Your story made me think about a personal experience I had. I was covering protesters, pro-war, or not pro-war, but they call them pro-troops and anti-war protesters, right? So they were 2 groups that protested across the street from one another, probably because it started out with the anti-war protesters. This is right in the height of the Iraq War. So you have these anti-war protesters out on the street corner every week. So the pro-troops protesters, counter-protesters would protest on the opposite corner, so that there'd be a balance, so to speak. And so I was covering that kind of, back and forth between these 2 groups. And there was one time where, they offered me water. Like one of the groups offered me water. I was like, ooh, do I take the water? And I refused. So
it's tough, yeah. No, even the littlest things, if someone takes a video of you and then they tweet it out, things can go viral.
Yeah.
It's like wildfire.
Because, especially in that instance, because one group's going to see me taking water from the other group, and there goes my credibility with the other group, you know?
Sure.
So
Sure. It's always there's whenever I introduce myself, and I always kind of pick either I work in the White House with certain groups, and then there's some people I say I'm a journalist. They kind of make that quick decision and say, because if I meet someone that's Republican leaning of any sort, instantly saying I work in the White House, it opens up, it softens me, even if they do end up they're obviously going to figure out I'm a journalist because that's why I'm talking to them. But no, it's definitely lead with the White House, and they're, do you see the president? And then it softens up the whole thing. But it's a dangerous game.
Yeah, it's like on that same note, I was covering both groups, and at first both the groups were very, they were hesitant, and they were a little, cautious about my presence, but both kind of opened up to me. But for the anti-war group, at the time, I was with the Air National Guard. And I let them know I was with the Air National Guard because I wanted to be honest and open with them. And I think once they knew that, they had a hard time letting me in. They were suspicious of me going forward. Sure. So, when I talked to my professor who I was working with at the time for that project, he was like, maybe don't mention that. Maybe that's a little overshare, Sure. Because it wasn't necessary for me to tell them that much. And but again, I wanted to be open and honest as much as possible. But from that, I learned maybe give them the information they need to know, not necessarily all the information.
I mean, I can say from working with a buddy of mine who's also Air National Guard. Air National Guard.
And, we get that a lot, actually. A lot of people say International Guard. And I'm like, no.
Oh, no. I forget whether I just forgot what he was.
Oh, okay.
It's of ours. And most of the protesters say it like Occupy Wall Street and things like that immediately knew he was military because the haircut and often the boots and things like that. So yeah. Just journalists are very often a little shaggier and don't usually wear like boots that go up to your ankle and things like that. So
well, I gotta say, for the friend we're talking about, he is a bit shaggier than the average bear. I'll tell you right now. For folks I've seen in the military. But anyway, Sarah, we brought you on, obviously because you're an awesome visual journalist, but because you came to my attention, at least, because of your, the work that is being recognized on these top 100 lists, the top of 2018 lists. And I'm going to go first start with your Vox photo. I'm going to bring this up, so anybody who's watching the live stream, watching this, they can check it out. If you're not watching it, just go to Vox and search for the 2018 pictures of women and non-binary photographers. So hopefully this pulls up. All right, here we go. So if you're watching, you can see this. If not, we'll paint a picture for the viewer.
Paint a word picture.
Word picture. That's right. So what we're looking at here is a picture of two women wearing looks like high heel shoes. One of them has a tattoo on their ankle that says "Be kind, be positive, be happy." The caption on this photo, which was taken July 24th of 2018, is. This tattoo is seen on the ankle of a survivor of sexual abuse by USA Gymnastics team Dr. Larry Nassar, during a press conference on the Capitol Hill. So, Sarah, why don't you go ahead and give us a little background on this photo?
Sure, I'd love to. So, actually, you missed a detail that is commonly passed over. If you look a little closer, right underneath that tattoo, you can see a scar, which is just exactly it's why she got this tattoo is obviously the scars that Larry Nassar left with her. So this is just an example. So this is when I was working for CQ Roll Call, which means that I was primarily shooting on the Hill. And shooting on the Hill really means shooting press conferences, and that's it. So you kind of get to shoot and show people what the PR people want you to see. And it's sometimes very challenging to make something unique. I would say it's always challenging to make something unique because it's always someone just at a podium. So I'm always looking for a detail that can better tell the story. And we are usually sitting on the ground shooting up at the podium. And when I noticed, I honestly first noticed that every woman was wearing sky-high heels. And I thought that was kind of interesting because that's super different than I think gymnasts are usually barefoot. Am I right about that? Or at least, barefoot.
Yeah. I know when they compete, they're barefoot, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Well, they wouldn't
I'm
wear
not a huge
anything that
gymnast.
would possibly screw with their ankles or
Yeah.
something like that. That's usually what
Exactly.
they probably wear sneakers or something like that. It's
Yeah, I
Exactly.
never wear heels when I do my gymnastics personally.
Me
but
too.
that's-
Yeah, I usually put those away.
And by the way, Sarah, if you
Um,
can, your mic is touching your shirt a little bit when you speak. So
Oh,
just make
sure.
sure that
Okay, let
that's
me move here. Yeah, let me move here back and also move this forward.
perfect.
Is this better
Indeed,
here?
yes, perfect.
Okay,
The
cool.
joys of live.
So I was first photographing their high heels just because every single person was in like these Barbie like high heels, and then I had noticed the tattoo, and then of course the scar, and it all just kind of came together. And with a press conference like that, every single victim, I think there was around 50 there that day, said something. They said, actually, I'm remembering now. Haven't thought about this since last year, but they had said what age they started being abused by Larry and what age they are now. So it was a huge group. It took a while. So I had a lot of time to kind of sit with the subjects and really figure out how I wanted to visually tell the story. And I'm really happy that it made it onto this list because, with the literally thousands of press conference photos I make a week, they kind of just go out into the void and don't really become anything. So I was happy that it had a little bit of legs.
I like that.
Nice. Yeah.
Had some legs. But yeah.
She'll be here all week, folks. Get your waitress.
But that's what I think is really great about this list is that I was profoundly affected by making this photo because I do own heels that look like that. And I actually do also have a scar. I actually have scars on my ankles and I have a tattoo on my ankle. So, I could really see myself in these people. And I was happy to not just give my editors, and I think this ran pretty big in a roll call as well. So not just give my editors something that's just the person standing at the podium, or even, God forbid, they run a photo of Larry Nassar with the story instead of the photos of the victims. So
yeah.
Was he there? Was this?
He was not. No. This is well after. I think we were saying, I don't know if he's in jail or not, but he's definitely not roaming free, I don't think. So no, this is definitely a celebration of the strength and power of these victims. And, there's really emotional moments like that on the Hill all the time.
Yeah.
Just the other day, I was photographing the father of a young girl that had a child that had died in Sandy Hook, and that was definitely a moment when I was very thankful to be using a silent shuttered camera because I didn't have to disturb him, and so that's another story for a different day.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I want to talk about the silent shutter there for a second, but sure. You were mentioning before how you didn't really want to think about this after you had shot it, and we were talking about Larry Nassar and what happened to him, and you didn't want to think about the situation, and I have to imagine being in this room and hearing these stories is probably very, like I said, very emotional. How do you do you let that get to you? I mean, whether you choose to or not, or do you maintain that professional decorum the entire time, and then maybe after you get home and you're decompressing and you realize what you were experiencing? How do you does that affect you on the moment or after the fact?
Oh, definitely after the fact. I always kind of joke that it's going to take a decade to fully realize, feel the full weight of everything that's going on in our political climate right now. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I get that question asked all the time because I'm working in the White House all the time. Was within feet of Trump today, and people have a lot of strong emotions about what's going on in the news. And one of the big ones was being in the Kavanaugh hearing, which it's when you're in the moment, I don't know if it's a defense mechanism or if it's just the fact that people are so human. And in a way, I find myself sympathizing with people more, that I think you can really demonize characters in the media for better, for worse, whatever your politics are. It really doesn't matter because it goes on both sides, Democrat, liberal, and Republican. But I definitely feel a lot when I'm at home and when I'm alone and when I'm cooking dinner at night. That's really when I take time to think about things. But when I'm in the moment, I don't have enough emotional energy to fully feel the weight of. It kind of blows my mind if I go home. I'm from Philadelphia. If I go home and and with my friends or family, and they are so emotionally taken by the news and the president and everything's going on Capitol Hill and Kavanaugh. And I'm just like, you're in a way, I was there in a way, you have more of an emotional like reaction to this because I think people have the room for it, but we're always just going. So I can't. So I just can't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You aren't from West Philadelphia, are you?
I'm not,
No.
but I am Philadelphia born and raised.
Okay,
So.
good. Hopefully you spend a lot of time on playgrounds. Okay, let's go to the CNN's top. You have 2 photos here. Let me just pull these up. We'll start with this one. This is caution tape in front of the Capitol building. The caption on this says, "Caution tape is draped around a fence facing the west front of the U.S. Capitol building. President Donald Trump had signaled he would rather partially shut down the federal government than give up his fight for a spending bill that includes $5 billion for a U.S.-Mexico border wall." So give us the background on this photo.
You know, it's kind of going on what I was saying before. Like, I feel like someone might see this photo and be like, wow, the shutdown, it's so dramatic, and the caution tape and the lights. And, you know, it's just not what was going through my head when I was making this photo. I had to make a lot of photos because there was, you know, story on story about the shutdown. And it's a shutdown. There's nothing happening. So, it kind of was a joke with my editor. Like, it stresses me out so much to take photos of nothing because it's hard. There's not action. But yeah, I had seen this caution tape and, you know, I was just scraping to find some photos, some visually interesting of the hill. I mean, the hill is very, very dark, even during the day. It's high noon. It's still pitch black. It's still like 4,000 ISO, stretching it. So once the sun goes down, which is when we were wanting photos to write stories, the later it got, there weren't really photos to be made inside. So kind of went outside, and thankfully the clouds are kind of ominous, and I never really noticed that they project that nice light up onto the dome. But, you know, it's funny looking back now at it. It seems really dramatic, but at the time it did not. I was just like desperate. It's kind of funny to me that it's on and I have found that to be consistent with other people that are on this that I have talked with, is it kind of makes us laugh, like what ends up on these lists, because they're like, oh, that's just that picture. Like, oh, I was just scraping by for some features. Like, oh, that was just some shot of this or that. So it was kind of, they seem like a lot less big of a deal once you're on them.
It's like, hey, go figure out a way to document an abstract concept or a concept, you know, versus like a thing. I mean, obviously the shutdown, as it grew, as it went longer, the stories became easier to tell because, oh, here's a trash can full of trash overflowing on the Capitol, or...
But even that's hard to find. I mean, you still have to search around. You still have to walk up and down the mall and find that perfect trash can. And, and that's not exactly motivating when you wake up in the morning. Instead of like, I'm going to go fly on Air Force One, you're like, gotta go find that perfect trash can. But, you know, that's what visual journalism, that's what people do all around the country every day. Like, I've worked at smaller papers, and I know that is the grind. I love a good feature hunt.
Right. You see that trash can, it's not completely full. You see somebody with a, you know, banana peel in their hands, be like, hey, maybe you want to throw your trash over there in that trash can. I'm not telling you what to do.
That's the guilt you feel. Oh my gosh, there was tourists that were facing one way, and if they faced the other way today, I would have gotten a perfect picture. But like, I can't live with it. It will just, it just that's can't.
You were talking about silent shooting cameras earlier, so that's obviously a mirrorless, right? So what are you shooting with mirrorless?
So I actually had to give it back today. I had some Sony loaners out just to test it out if I wanted it. I have some positives, some negatives. But the thing I did send to you was a link to the 100 to 400, which was just life-changing. To have 400 millimeters, I have never had 400 millimeters at my disposal. 300 if I'm feeling strong and rested and whatever. But yeah, that 100 to 400 just was like totally mind-boggling to have that on. I mean, it's as light as a 24-70 regular like DSLR Canon. So I was sad to give them back, but I think it will be back in my hands soon if I can swing it. But yeah, I've been playing around with them for a month. It was and not to get into a huge, Sony rant, because I am fresh.
For one episode, we don't have Travis here because he is a Sony ambassador. But anyways, go on.
I was talking Sony ambassador here too. I guess my main takeaways, not that this is the main topic at hand for this podcast, but just it's like my fever dream to not know when I'm making a photo. So it was totally like, I've had so many stress dreams of like holding a shutter and not like being able to tell if it's making a picture, and I wake up, I'm like, did I get the picture? And that is what a silent camera is like. You just have to somehow trust. It's almost like the Black Diamond if you're skiers. Like, it is the advanced level of making photos, even though it does do a lot of work for you. But it is very distressing to be in a moment with the president, sometimes moments last for 7 seconds and then they're done. That's that's your whole day's work is 7 seconds. So not knowing if you made a picture or not is very scary.
Yeah,
it is. I have I'm filming this on it, or not filming, but using the Nikon Z6 right now. And I put it on. It has a shutter sound, like a very, very, very quiet one. But there's also absolutely silent, just, dead quiet mode. And I tried that for a while. I couldn't do it. I literally could not handle the fact that I had no idea if I was taking images. Because the same thing, while you're taking video, you can take, basically screen grabs. And I kept screwing up the fact that it would pull out a video or something like that would happen. And so I would just end up taking images. And so they got to figure out on all these mirrorless cameras, once they go completely quiet, like a light or something in the viewfinder that goes, you took a photo.
Yeah.
It's okay.
You did it. Good
all
job.
All you see is like a flash. You just see like a black, just for a moment. And it's just like, I need something. I need my phone to buzz or something. I don't know what.
No, I wanted to in a way. So when you do the mechanical shutter on a Sony, it does kind of it does a little thing. Yeah. I don't know. Shutters.
Yeah, it's like it's like a fourth of a shutter. Yeah.
But I need that. I need it to physically make some sort. I don't want to sound, because that's the whole point. Yeah. I like that part. But I need it to tell me. So that's my biggest woe. But
I will say with the Panasonics, there is a small amount of feedback that you get. There's a very faint sound. You can't hear it unless you're right on top of it, that I hear when I'm using the electronic shutter. And then the screen does black out for a quick second. I had a Nikon 1, which was their mirrorless point and shoot camera. I had that for a while and tried it out. And that gives you absolutely zero feedback when you turn off the shutter. That was the one where when I was shooting it, I had, what, did it actually capture something? Because the only thing you can tell is there's a little counter that shows you took a picture and it goes down one. Yeah. That was it. So that one freaked me out. So at least the Panasonics gave me enough feedback to where I know, okay, I'm getting the picture. But once you get used to that and you get comfortable with electronic shutter, it's so great. And it's probably one of the most valuable features on the mirrorless cameras, I think, personally, is that capability to go completely radio silent, dead silent. And it's we were talking on another episode about, the next election, or the next time there's that handover of power to the new president, whenever that might be. Some people think 2020, some people think 2024. I'm thinking 2028, after President Trump's third term. But we're gonna have that same sort of scene between the two, the outgoing and incoming, and it's gonna be dead silent because everybody's gonna be using mirrorless, and as opposed to the last time when it was just Shutter City, As
a person who occasionally does video, that also is very welcoming. I just can't think, because I often will put a camera on a tripod to do video and then be shooting right next to it. If you're you're on the stage, or you're on, you're covering a convention or something like that. And I forget that my mic is right freaking there. And then I'll go back and it's click, click, click. And it's oh, God damn it. I just ruined my own damn audio. So yeah. I welcome.
We
I welcome
actually
it.
we had a situation on the Hill the other day where we were shooting some witnesses testifying about whatever. Wasn't like a big one or of Cohen or anything, but one of the PR people were upset about the shutter sound coming through the mics, and they had told us to stop shooting. But then I had said to her, I was like, I'm shooting on a silent camera, like buzz off basically. And she was like, fine. But I hated myself for saying that because that's going to set a precedent. And I mean, our industry is already so like not welcoming to people that can't afford cameras. And until they are exactly how much the DSLRs are, which I think that is in 2028 times, I'm terrified of it becoming a standard, especially for things like what you said with something presidential or. But I have to also say, and I promise you, everything would circle back to Trump because that is my whole life. But there is a drama to when we go into the Oval or the Cabinet Room or wherever we're going, that for some subjects, obviously having a huge chorus of shutters is not welcome. It makes people nervous. But there are also things like red carpets. I mean, can you imagine a red carpet with silent shutters? It's so awkward.
Yeah, I've been to one now, and when there's more than not, because I do entertainment as well, and it is weird, and it's just like I don't think that the celebs like I actually am really curious on like if one day it does switch and Trump is a little Oval Office circle when he's sitting and doing a signing or something. How is he going to react?
Oh, he will not be good. No,
he'll be like,
it'll be really
why aren't you guys taking photos?
Yeah,
what's going on?
Yeah. And even
that
if
might be his moment when he finally breaks down.
Yeah, that will be it. No, but it is like it signals the start of it. In politics, it is really necessary. It shapes the soundscape, the situation, the way people act. It fits. It is. I don't like it when there's more people shooting silent than not.
If nothing else, like it's a thing that I mean, like I've been watching a lot of Law and Order lately, and there'll be like the when the criminal what's the walk where I forget what's the perp walk. There you go. I should know this. Come on, I've watched like 12 hours worth of Law and Order in the last 24 hours.
Get with it, Zach.
That's why I missed my assignment date. Come on, and it's in the late 90s, and they're all shooting film, and they're all shooting, and it's interesting to think about how it used to be, or at least how media perceived that the paparazzi, the group of photographers jumping on a subject and taking a photo. And how it's going to be, how it is now, because you watch any political entertainment show, anything like that, you hear those shutters within the sound. It's just something they know to add in there. Sure. And in 10 years, it's just going to be so damn awkward.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's just be like, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I think, we're going to see the shutter sound it's going to go the way of the record scratch. Okay. So what I mean by that is it's going to be a sound effect that we associated that you'll see, in movies and stuff like that. It's going to be obviously associated, because they use it so effectively when they're trying to show the celebrity who's trying to go out, and they're getting hounded by. Yeah. Obviously, if that's a silent scene and they're trying to get out, you don't hear that shutter sound. That doesn't affect like, oh, they're being hounded by the paparazzi, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be like that. So in real life, no one's going to be using shuttered, mirrored cameras. We all be using mirrorless, and we'll all be shooting silently. But as it's represented in dramatic fiction, you're going to hear shutter sounds all the time whenever there's a photographer around, just because that's how people associate. Like you said, that's the soundscape of that particular scene. But again, it will be an antiquated thing, like the record scratch. No one scratches a record, except for hipsters, who happens to play records. But again, so I'm curious. Actually, it'll be interesting to see as time goes on. How future generations that don't grow up with that sort of thing, just like, you didn't grow up with film. You may have used film. I don't know. You probably have. But, again, there's a generation gap there, right? So it's just interesting to see how that'll be reflected over time. But again, I think it's a good movement. I think the silent mirror thing is great. But let's talk about this photograph. And I just wanted to bring up an anecdote really quick. You were just talking about it. I was photographing someone I work with who is, probably about a generation older than me, and I was taking their photograph with my GH5 and electronic shutter mode, and I would, I'd be snapping the photograph, and they'd be like, "Are you taking the picture? Are you taking the picture?" Like, yeah, it's a silent shutter. Yeah. That threw them off. They didn't. They were so used. They needed the shutter sound to know when a picture was taken. So, it will be definitely something that takes time for people to adapt to.
For sure.
But let's talk about this group photo you shot here on the Capitol Hill. This is all the freshmen, not senators, House of Representatives folks, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's a group here of probably about, I don't know, like 150 folks
100,
or something?
Yeah, 120.
Okay, so talk about the background of this photo.
I mean, not too much to say. Every time I see this photo, all I can see is the coat rack.
Yeah, I know, right?
On the right. But there was really no way, unless I was going to crop it more on like a 4:5 ratio, to get that out. But, it was just a typical photo op. It was more the before photos that maybe even are included in this list. Probably not. But yeah, the interactions between kind of who was clicking up was more what was interesting rather than this photo. Who was interacting, and the absolute media frenzy that happened. People running to get photos of AOC as they disbanded. But, this is more like a photo for the Capitol like frame or something. I'm honestly really surprised it made it onto this, but it's more the historicness of how diverse the Dems were this year. So
there's a lot of diversity on the Republican side too. I mean, you've got somebody with an eye patch.
Well, you have people with red
that's
ties
diversity.
and blue ties.
True.
That's thing.
Wow.
I mean, there's a lot of different shades of white in that group,
Yes. Yeah, it was stark when we got the little guidance with the names and the little photos of people for the newbies. When you could really see it, I think it kind of went viral. It went around, but it was very obvious when you could see the little headshots of each group next to each other. It was like, whoa.
I am curious though about this shot, more the logistical aspect to it. Specifically, obviously you were out shooting this, but I'm guessing this group wasn't set up for you. It was set up for was there an official Capitol photographer who shot this, and then all the media were invited as well?
Yeah. So the official photographers, God bless them, they want their perfect straight on shot in front of all of us. So it was a dance between cutting them out, negotiating with them to move over so we can get a shot. But as I said, Washington is mostly complaining. So all I can see when I see this photo is the chorus of complaints behind me. Everyone loves to just bitch and moan about everything. So yeah, it was super cold. That's a lot of complaining, and the coat rack and the cars behind, and them not filling out the bleachers, and literally it's just nonstop. So there's just that's all I can think when I see this. But yeah, it was more just a photo op for the official whoever.
Yeah, I was gonna say I hope there was an official photographer, because I've shot a number of group photos in my day. So again, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing that poor lady in the far fourth row who's you can't even see but barely the top of her head,
Yeah.
And then there's a couple other people whose heads are blocked, and you're always going to have that, with group photos if you don't have a good photographer who's managing the group. But again, you were just there on the tertiary trying to get the shot as well. So I'm guessing the main photographer hopefully was on some sort of elevated platform and could hopefully get the whole group as they were there.
Yeah.
But,
well, it's also a lot of personalities. So every single person wants to be in the front row. They don't necessarily want to be in the logical order. It's a lot of egos to be in one place. So that definitely plays into the messiness of it all. And also the official photographer, though they are for the Capitol, they don't necessarily want to say, hey, you over there, move your head out this way, move your head out that way, move to this row, bump, hey, tall white guy in the front, there go the back, with the rest of you.
Yeah.
So,
I typically say, hey,
politics, as there's a lot of politics to everything.
Yeah.
Even something silly like this.
Yeah. I typically say, if you can't see me, I can't see you. So, but again, I would have told that lady in the back row, "Hey, honey, ma'am, please come forward. You're in the wrong row, or go to the edge." I would have put her on the far right, next to the lady with the purple shawl. But anyways, that's just me. I'm nitpicking. I'm quarterbacking.
It was a cluster, as they say, of just madness.
That's what it is.
People that have worked there for 40 years do not like that day.
Yeah. And also, I can say from shooting enough group photos, herding cats is an art form.
Absolutely.
And this is probably the cats of cats in terms of herding.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, let's get into our topics this evening.
Oh, my goodness.
40 minutes in, let's start talking about some visual journalism. Am I right?
Sure. Yes.
But I did want to discuss plagiarism really quick. We talked about this prior to the show. I am into the world of video games. I'm a fan of video games. And there's a guy named Philip Mewson. You may or may not have heard of him. He did a lot of plagiarism. He plagiarized some reviews and other sort of video game articles. And I know most of our audience probably was like, why are you talking about video games on a visual journalism podcast? But I bring it up to talk about the concept of plagiarism. And what I really want to ask about is there a path towards forgiveness or a path towards retribution when you have plagiarized? And so, for instance, this Philip guy, he committed the plagiarism 8 months ago, and he came on and he didn't really apologize for it. He sort of tried to pass along and say, the blame, and he didn't take responsibility. And then now recently, like in the past few days, he came out with a sincere apology and took responsibility for what he did. And I want to know, from your perspective, if somebody plagiarizes, is there a sort of a path towards retribution, especially nowadays? I mean, anybody can search your name and see exactly what you did wrong. And I thought to myself, would anyone ever give this guy another chance? Should anyone give anyone another chance if they've plagiarized? So I'll throw it to you all. What do you all think?
Well, everything circles back to Trump. No. So, I mean, in my day-to-day, people mess up all the time. Like on a little smaller scale than plagiarizing. But when everything we do in the White House is a cluster, and we are bumping into each other, and you might be a little too aggressive, or there's always just drama constantly. And the way the ship keeps sailing, things remain smooth, is to just instantly apologize. It's kind of funny. It's like a chorus of I'm sorries when we come back after a big crazy scrum. And I think that's kind of how I like to live my life now, is maybe necessarily up until this point and working here, I haven't been necessarily someone that wants to say I'm sorry instantly and come right out with it. But that's just the golden rule, is to be sorry and be honest about it. But if this guy, who his followers, yourself included, had
I'm not a follower, but
made it up, or just watching under part of this world, if he had instantly apologized, our apologies literally come moments after it happened. Our bad thing we did happens. Things sting a lot worse when you just are. And I think it shows your moral conscience is you just say sorry instantly. It means you actually felt bad about it. So clearly this man does not feel bad for what he did.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my whatever. My rant
Zach,
on honesty.
Zach, you have a very high standard in your line of work. You've talked multiple times about how you take what you do very seriously in terms of your research and everything with your guy. When you're covering stories, if someone plagiarized a story and stuff, are they done? Is it over in this day and age, or is there a road to redemption? Is there a path?
I mean, clearly. I mean, I would say it's almost impossible for me to ever trust when it comes to investigative journalism or print journalism. It's almost impossible for me to ever trust somebody again. I mean, obviously, plagiarism is different than making stuff up. There's a lot of journalists who will, won't attribute quotes that other people took. Jason Blair. I'm trying to think of some other people, but there's been Stephen Glass, it's another one, kind of a mediocre film about him, Shattered Glass, but hit with Hayden Christensen, dear God. But anyway, But so it's hard to say. I mean, like, people, if it's just, there's like different levels on everything. I mean, if somebody stands by the fact that they didn't do it and then it's been proven, I think it's, one thing. But if they, like, I have a friend who, it wasn't plagiarism, but it was something else. He had a drug problem, and he did a massive mea culpa and went through a thing, and now he's one of the top, back to being, it took him like 15 years, and he's back to being one of the best investigative journalists in the country. And so there's different ways. I mean, I think you're right, is like, if you get caught on this, I mean, obviously if you do it, and then you should apologize anyway later on when you realize what you did was wrong. The problem is, most people that do these things aren't realizing that what they did was wrong in the first place. They think that they figured out justifications to do things. I mean, within photojournalism, it always ends up being like, I was having a conversation with Benjamin Chesterton about I think it was a Reuters photographer who photoshopped out a bag or something, or it was a person out of one of the photos that was published, and it was found out. And luckily, the Reuters caught it, and so they kept it internal. And the guy's, I believe, still working for Reuters because it was a one-off thing. He was having PTSD issues from being, I think it was in Gaza for too long. But then on the other hand, there's that guy who, another photojournalist who, he photoshopped in more smoke clouds into the background of
classic example.
Which was like, I mean, you see the original photo and you're like, that's enough smoke. Gaza is on fire. Like, that's enough. And then he photoshopped, and it was clearly a clone tool, and it was like, I could see that with a small pix. And I don't think you should ever work in the industry again. I mean, there's ways that people can go off and do other things. I mean, you become a wedding photographer, you become a event photographer, do something with your skills. Just in journalism, I think that you're done when it comes to certain things. Obviously, plagiarism, like, that happens a lot more in outside of photojournalism, because I think it'd be hard to, plagiarize photojournalism. Because even you were saying, Sarah, like, when you're all standing right next to each other,
sure.
Thing, and you're like, what I always have the problem is that I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, cool, because I work for a wire, so I never know where anything's going. I just happen to cross it occasionally. I'm like, oh, cool, I got a hit in Vanity Fair, and it's like, oh no, that was Jabin. He was standing right next to me. God
exactly.
Damn it. Or 9 times out of 10 for me, it's Scott Olson, who's always like right here, sure, taking a better photo than me.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between shooting the same photo because you were standing right next to each other, and a difference between like, oh, they're making this type of photo, oh, I should try to make that same photo. And I think that's like where the moral compass comes in, and you feel like icky if you do that.
I mean,
I think that's it. The ickiness is.
I've done that before. When like,
it's not a crime though.
Taking a photo, like, oh, I'm like, oh, I didn't think about taking a photo, and then I'll start having a conversation. Maybe I'll like slide in and do the same, with a photo with him. And 9 times out of 10, I don't end up using it because I feel icky about doing it.
Exactly. And it's more like person to person that you're like, oh, well, they know they made that first, and I don't want. And they like, But I think it's that internal icky that maybe this video game, anyone that does something bad, like plagiarizing or copying or faking anything, if they don't immediately feel bad, then they're not so great.
Well, I think also, I mean, like, that's a really good bar that every photojournalist should have, is at the moment that they stop feeling icky about doing certain things is the moment you got to step back, and you might want to take a break from the industry as a whole and be like, wait, why did I think it was okay to ask those people to turn around on the on the square and get the better photo? Why did I ask the person, why did I ask that person, unless I'm identifying it as a posed photo, like I'll do that, being like, hey, can you wait for 1 minute? I just want to get a close-up shot of your sunglasses or something like that. Mm-hmm. Then in the caption, it's a posed photo, stands for a portrait or something like that. But plagiarism, I mean, that for the most part, I mean, I see it like there's a lot of that in the wedding industry. People will grab photos from Facebook or whatever and then use them to start their own business, which they almost always, they so often get caught. It's like we've dealt with like at least 3 episodes that we've chatted about this sort of thing because Petapixel writes an article, but it's like it's surprising that so many people do it, but on the other hand, they do it, and they sometimes win awards with it in other countries and things like that. So with internet, I mean, that's why I always recommend getting a copyright lawyer. But but beyond that, I mean, I think it just comes down to, all of it has come down to just like the moment that you start feeling, if you don't feel icky when you do something that's questionable, that's when whatever the job is, that's when you really need to step back and kind of question what you're doing in the industry and kind of have a conversation with a colleague or something like that. But yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean, going to the, again, Phillips case, I would say that, as a person, yeah, the first step is apologizing, right? Admitting you did wrong so you can move on. But in the as competitive an industry as, video game journalism is, because there's so few people who do it and so many people who want to do it, he will never work in the industry in the sort of typical capacity as he was, where he was a staffer for a specific website. He'll never do that again because, again, with the internet the way it is, it's too easy to just look up somebody's info really quick and do a quick YouTube search or Google search on someone. And with the amount of resumes that they get for all of them, very few positions, it's just like that's a disqualifying factor immediately. As someone who's hired people, I would say that would be a disqualifying factor for me if I was hiring somebody for public affairs who did that sort of thing, and not necessarily because I don't think his apologies is sincere, and I don't think he won't try to not do it again. But it's just like if I have the 2 qualified candidates and one committed plagiarism and the other one didn't, it's not a tough one right there.
It's a pretty easy choice.
But what I would tell him is, if I would say, do make that effort if that's what you want to do. Continue to try to redeem yourself, and then change your name and grow a beard. And that's honestly, that's the best way to get back into the industry as someone else, because your name is now tarnished with this. If you're Googleable and people can find that out, you'll never work in the industry again. But again,
I'd argue that in our industry, you don't even have to be Googleable. It just is. We're such a small group of people that news travels really fast, and people have a lot of time on their hands waiting for things to start or whatever.
So much.
So you have to be careful, and even if you don't go viral, you can go internally viral of just people saying stuff. So it's scary. As a young person, it's nerve-wracking to be like, oh gosh, I could do anything. I could have one misstep and then it's done. But can't think like that.
I was gonna say if it happened to you, Zach, I'd be like, who's this new guy in the block? Rack Zoberts? I don't know who he is. He looks very familiar, but anyways. All right. Military visual journalism is something that we've talked about before, and mostly around the time of the Defense Information School's military photojournalism and visual journalism awards, which I think are coming up pretty soon. Anyways, I just recently discovered this website and this competition. It's called the Military Visual Awards. You can find it at militaryvisualawards.org, and it's basically the Milvid competition, but it's not run by the military. So they run the exact same rules I've seen. The only difference, and this is actually what kind of excites me, is that they allow imagery from PAOs, so officers essentially in our field, as well as enlisted. And the visual journalism competitions in the military are enlisted only, which totally makes sense because they're the ones who actually, they're the ones who are primarily the operators. But there are a lot of great officers out there who are also picking up a camera and shooting stuff, and I think their work also deserves to be recognized. So I'm glad to see there's a competition where if you're in that category, there aren't a ton of us, but if you are and you want to submit, you can. So that's pretty neat. I asked, I sent you the link. Hopefully you had a chance to look at this website. From my perspective, I've seen a lot of great military visual journalism here. A lot of the same type of stuff that I see at the other awards. A lot of names too that I've seen from my field, who are getting recognized. So that's great to see them. Another avenue where they can be recognized for their work. Were there any images that stuck out to either of you from this collection of winners by chance? Anything you thought was like, man, that's an awesome photo?
I'm on the website right now and I'm stunned. I'm like, wow, the access that is. I haven't really given it much thought before. I mean, I have in some aspects, but oh my gosh, the winners is breathtaking. It's amazing. It's just, I mean, access is everything, and this is obviously the ultimate access, being partially part of a group, and also, I mean, you are part of the group, and also being able to document them is just a dream. So This is really amazing.
I find that interesting coming from the person who has access to the president and the White House on a regular basis. Access is very important. You're right. Yes, it is very important to be part of a small group.
The White House.
No, but you are part of the White House press corps, right? Or you I know.
I am thankful to be part of that group instead. But
and you do have the White House Press Photographers Association competition, right? So.
Yes, we do, and it's a similar industry. It's probably equally as nitpicky and in particular as I went to the judging of it, and it's comical how nitpicky and finicky the judges can be about it, because it's super similar subject matter. Instead of being, I mean, in the way that I am looking at this website right now, being completely wowed by absolutely every image, I feel like that's how people look at Washington stuff. It's like, well, this stuff just happens right in front of us. Like, it's not foreign. It's not like inconceivable. So I'm looking at these with a foreign perspective. Everything's very wow.
Yeah. Zach, any picture that jumped out at you?
I'm mainly wowed, like, the second place and third place photographers. Michael Surratt is the photographer of the year. His work is fantastic, but the second and third place are like unbelievable. Like the winner he has very good like portrait shots and kind of his stories or whatever. But like Larry Reed Jr.'s work is site's really slow waiting for it to load. Just some of the shots, because I friends with you, friends with a bunch of people that have this similar access and friends, so I've seen a million of these photos. And it takes a lot for me to get wowed by these at this point. And these are really incredible. Just like there's one image within his portfolio of I assume an airman with his both of his hands on the nose of a plane. Like I've seen that happen a bunch of times in photos, but just framing and things like that is pretty incredible.
I love the photo, the green one.
The night vision shot.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see here, the green
it's like
one.
in a plane. Yeah, it's like maybe he even shot it through night vision goggles or something.
Well, we have night vision lenses.
What? I've never even heard of that.
It's a filter.
It's a totally different world.
No, their gear is
It's like $10,000 just for the lens by itself. So I don't think the Times is gonna.
I hope my taxpayer dollars went right to that lens. I hope
your taxpayer dollars goes to the very best equipment money can buy in a lot of cases.
Of all the things I want my taxpayer dollars to go to, it definitely is night vision, is cool lenses and things like that. It's maybe not the bombs, but
if I could pick where my money goes to, I would definitely choose that.
Well, what's funny is that a lot of the new cameras coming out, especially like the Sonys, the A7S II especially, have such great low light capability that we were actually looking at that when I was with Combat Camera as a potential sort of substitute or replacement for night vision, because again you can shoot high resolution, silent, color, almost night vision ish quality photography, and again that silent nature is very important. It comes with the mirrorless, and again it's not quite there. Maybe the A7S III will be it. But again, it's very, very impressive what they're gotten up to with regard to the lower light capability on those sensors. So again, another generation or two, and I don't see why. Because again, the night vision is great, but you're looking at grainy, lowish resolution type stuff. It's like, again, it's very tactical. It's not winning awards, but again, it's helping to do the mission and tell the story and help the commanders on the ground make decisions, which is what combat camera is all about.
Just wait until the Nikon Z series 50 millimeter. I think it's what 0.8. The 0.85 lens comes out. 50 millimeter 0.85. I mean, it'll be a little hard to focus in pitch dark with a hair plane of focus, but you'll be able to get something.
Yeah, I would say the big thing that is sort of the selling point is not necessarily the low aperture, but the zoom ability. So being able to zoom and have low aperture, because you want that ability to reach out, use that 1 to 400 type thing and get that, especially if you're doing surveillance or something like that.
You guys don't go by the Kappa rule, like you have to, get closer or zoom with your feet. Come on. You guys are military.
When you're photographing the enemy, you don't want to.
I mean, come on.
From
Get
cover.
up there.
From cover.
I want to see.
Silently,
I want to
Zach.
see close. I want to see the guy's eyes.
Yeah, well,
I want to see that Taliban eyes,
Oh my gosh.
right in there. Come on.
Oh, Zach.
I don't want any zoom stuff. Come on.
Sarah, do you have any desire to embed with the military and go to a combat zone and document that? Is that in your bucket list?
Yeah, I think I do. One of my favorite things about my job now is it's I would say 80% the logistics of just being there, having the right gear, having the right clothes, having the right everything. It's really the logistics and planning of it all that is a lot of the job that I love. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big part of embedding with them is just being in the right place and being prepared to take that photo. So I think I do. I didn't think about it before, but it's traveling with the president is somewhat like being in a war zone. It's a lot of hectic, crazy, no time to think, a lot of split decisions, a lot of And I mean, even actually flying in military vehicles. I've flown in an Osprey a couple times, and that was quite a experience.
I haven't even flown in an Osprey, so count yourself lucky.
Well, I must admit, it really shows how green I am. I knew it was partially a helicopter. I thought it always was a helicopter. I didn't fully understand the concept of it becoming a plane. So once it turned into plane mode, my stomach flipped over about 100 times, and we almost had disaster, but
oh my gosh,
it was okay.
You're also lucky because a lot of people flying it, they just don't land well in it. That's the big problem with that plane. That's why the president was not allowed. I think Obama wasn't allowed to fly in it until I don't even know if the president allowed to fly in it.
They still are in a Marine One type of regular.
Yeah, no, it's just there was a thing. Because Dave, you can correct me on this, but I remember there was something with Obama. Maybe they were going to switch over, or something was going to happen with the Osprey, and then basically everyone was Secret Service or safety, whoever was no.
Yeah,
no,
they're not.
Too many of these things crash.
Yeah. I'm glad I didn't know that when I was up in them.
Yeah, sorry.
But I'll probably be back in them someday soon. So.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Osprey has had sort of a little bit of a storied history, but I think it's come a long way. And I haven't heard of any major incidents that have occurred with it. I would be more than happy to get inside one and fly in it. I would feel comfortable and safe. So, now Boeing, I don't know if I get inside of a Boeing 737 MAX personally, but
by the way, this podcast, Dave just got a new sponsor. Osprey is.
Well, who makes the Osprey? I think Northrop Grumman makes the Osprey. I think.
I don't know. This is a
Boeing
photojournalism
I don't
podcast.
know.
Not
no idea.
Well, I can kiss that
We're kind of
sponsorship deal goodbye. Anyways, let's close up and talk about another minor award ceremony. You may have heard about it. It's starting to trend. It's getting some attention. It may go somewhere. I don't know. It's called
What could it be?
It's called the Pulitzer.
Pulitzer.
Yes, that's I think the correct. So yes, the Pulitzer Prizes announced their winners for 2019. I brought them up here on the screen. You can check it out. I'm just using Petapixel because they're quickly accessible and they organized it. But obviously a lot of great photographs here from a lot of the major major events that have occurred throughout the year. I think we talked about this last week, or the year. One of the we talk about this every week, but again, I think we talked about again, you have to have impactful imagery, well shot, that also features a relevant news topic, that is in the zeitgeist and is very relevant to kind of win this award. So, what are your all thoughts on these pictures? Start with you, Zach. Any particular Pulitzer that kind of stands out?
Well, I mean the main image from Reuters of the migrants fleeing the tear gas. I mean that image and kind of images from that story.
Yeah,
I think that and the photo that won from oh my God, John Moore of the crying girl. Just changed those two photos. Kind of, it's one of those, like, I don't know if those two images, if they didn't exist, whether a different set of images would have come across and changed the story or whatever. But I mean, those two images came across, and then Trump's entire move and the kind of entire conversation about the border just changed. When the crying girl came out, like that, when that photo was released, that the conversation, like, within, because I was covering the border and work with a lot of I've covered stories with a lot of migrant activist groups and things like that. Like, immediately that it changed the conversation, and there was actually some hope that the general public would actually pay attention to it for more than the 10 seconds that anyone's allowed to pay attention to anything other than the Mueller report or it coming out, as for the last 2 years. And I mean, like, that in was it I forget whether it's John or Jason Soberoff's coverage over at MSNBC talking about the camps and things like that. It just ended the idea that he'd be able to do what he wanted to do at the border without executive decisions or stuff like that. And so, like, the fact that one won the World Press photo and this one gets the breaking news photo at the Pulitzer is to me, like, I can't see anything. I at least can't remember anything else. It's really tough to remember what the hell happened in the last year. I'm sure you don't know that, Sarah. I mean, like,
I'm all too aware.
It's like, what did I shoot last week? Oh my God.
It was Trump.
Well, I mean, what did he say? What did he do? Like, but
no, it's just Trump. It's all. It's,
yeah. Oh yeah. It's just one.
The blur of.
Yeah, I guess that kind of summarizes it. But it's also. I mean, I know this is your beat, but it's also nice to, like, it's like you have photos that stories are somewhat separated from that man. So
no, it would have been disappointing if he was the face of Pulitzer's. He is the biggest news story, but he isn't the face. He isn't the human element of it. He's definitely just the PR guy for his. So yeah, no, I am happy that it won. I have to say, I have a huge beef with the fact that it wasn't Maggie Staver and Lynn Johnson's photo, the story that did not win feature photography. I have never been more blown away by a photo story. Maybe it's just my style or my cup of tea type of thing. Little, like, bizarro, little surreal, but also so human and gorgeous and well shot. And I just could talk about it for 100 years. I just think they deserve it times a million. And it is nothing against Lorenzo. He's wonderful and his work is beautiful, and Yemen is so important. But I just feel like I've seen that type of imagery before, and I feel like we have never seen a face transplant like this before. I think that's worth honoring. It breaks my heart that they're not going to have that to say that won the Pulitzer. It's incredible work. So that's my 2 cents on the Pulitzers this year.
Well, if you want to know more about Lorenzo and who he is as a person, we actually had him on our show on episode 157. And we did have the ladies who produced the face transplant story on a previous episode.
I'll have to listen to that.
Yeah, I don't know the exact episode right now off the top of my head. I'll look that up and try to get to you. But we did have that on the show. Just do a search and you'll find that.
Sure.
But yeah, awesome story. Great to hear from them and the kind of the background about that. Obviously difficult to see, really. Again, but. Definitely a story that should have been told, and it was well told, very well told.
It's so beautiful.
Absolutely. So yeah, wasn't there another panelist who was on the show, Zach, who you had mentioned won a Pulitzer? Didn't you email me about that?
Well,
or was that World
Noah Berger was a finalist for with the Associated Press team for covering the fires in California.
Yeah.
And well deserved. Obviously, I mean, it's the stuff coming that team has photographed is ridiculous. But I do. It is interesting because I mean, like, feature photography is always such a tough Pulitzer to look at because so often it is those type of stories. Again, Lorenzo's photos are absolutely amazing, and not to take anything away from them at all, but so often that type of tragic imagery ends up winning over something like Maggie and Lynn's images when it's completely impossible to go. Like, if I was a judge, I have no idea where I'd go with that. I don't know like how to do it, because I completely agree with you. Like, especially talking to her about the logistics and how long that story took. I mean, it was I think years in the making, and the logistics and just the way that because I've seen a lot of surgery images, like covering different, like babies, like a baby heart surgery, and they're incredible. But the work that they did for National Geographic is kind of mind blowing, and it got a finalist, so it's great. But to see kind of another one of those stories win, but.
Yeah,
I
just think also, I mean, I'm sure you guys know better than I, because you've actually talked to them, and I'm very excited to listen to that. But
episode 141, by the way, if anybody is interested.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
But it's their relationship that they obviously had to have to their subjects I think is what deserves an incredible award like the Pulitzer, because I can't, it's something everyone can aspire to. Like, that is such an incredible level of intimacy you can have with I can't even imagine the amount of hours, weeks, years that they had to have spent with her, and probably have to be really raw and real with her too, to have her trust them enough to make those photos is just amazing.
It is one of those things. Like, I feel like the Pulitzers need another award, because this award seems to go for those for the long form war, combat, famine award, like photo essays that are kind of separated from breaking news. This award kind of seems to go to that so often, whether it be Tyler Hicks, 17 times over, every time well deserved. I just always make the joke that he's always, somewhere and winning a Pulitzer. But whether it's somebody like him or what, it's like I want another award that gives people that, whether it be like the other finalist that spent so much time with a complex, reading off the screen here, complex developmental disability.
Oh, wow.
Correct. And I just feel like there needs to be something separate, because just every year it feels like, I mean, maybe I'll have to go back through it, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like every year the feature photography goes to something like that.
Yeah.
Something that has to do with violence. In some way, violence or famine or something like that, as opposed to something potentially positive, which is so goddamn rare in our field, especially award winning. I mean, when's the last time you saw a positive award? And obviously it has a lot to do with, it's usually easy to get a positive image. Like, it's not like you didn't have to get shot at, you didn't have to go whatever. So like, I kind of understand that to some level. There's, got to be something along those lines in the back of your head if you're a judge. But yeah, I agree with you. And obviously I'm weighed a little bit by the fact that we had like an hour and a half conversation with Maggie and Lynn. So it's tough to not be, whatever, but I mean, not that anyway. So
if somehow there was, I mean, it seems kind of obvious I feel like it's on the tip of your tongue here. It's just like domestic picture story and then foreign picture story. If it was
something
that seems
like
pretty simple because these two domestic picture stories are really they're slices of American life. So wait, was the face transplant in the U.S.? Am I totally?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Or just like something that's non-combat, non-famine, you know, like if it's an orphanage in Romania, that's fine. But I don't know, you know, I totally agree with you. I don't know what the answer is and whether the Pulitzer would add it. But I mean, was it World Press? I think they added a whole boatload of different awards like environmentalism or environmental coverage and things like that, which I think which is great because then they have a chance to have some of those amazing aerial images that, you know, for climate change coverage and things like that will never win, you know, like you're never going to have an amazing photo of a sea lion or something like that when a World Press image of the year, but it still deserves, you know, something within the world of coverage. You know, you're always going to have somebody getting killed, somebody set on fire, I'm trying to think of the past couple years, what images have won, and it's always something like that. But yeah.
I just, as someone that has a lot of career ahead, that obviously has aspirations, everyone has the same aspirations.
Keep that optimism. You're going to need that optimism in this
But I
career.
don't have, I feel the opposite of optimism. Like this, I find this very discouraging. I can't imagine making a picture story better than this face transplant picture story, and the fact that it didn't win, I just find very discouraging. I'm kind of like putting those dreams to rest. I'm like, okay, it's just not going to happen if I don't, and I don't really want to risk my life to the point of being at war. So, you know.
But this is something, and this is, again, like I had a little bit of this conversation with Ben Chesterton about like the problem of awards and what kind of pull they have for photojournalists to pull. A lot of times, I mean, obviously you look at who won this year and or whatever. It's like, you know, no one was not doing important work. It wasn't like anyone's pulling images away from that, but it definitely does. I mean, I think the Pulitzers are less so than like World Press or Sony or, you know, any number of other ones that, you know, like Pulitzers, I feel like you really just can't take a photo for Pulitzer the way that you can take a photo for one of the World Press Awards and be like that's for this image, you know, like that's for this award or whatever. But it does still really screw with, you know, the way that we look at it, the way that we cover things and what we're going to look for. And we may not have photojournalists cover things that need to be covered because they're not award-winning things, you know, like
that's what I think could be fixed by if this story, this very sweet story had won, it would, I think, really light a fire under a lot of people to want to put that level of time and effort into people and into our subjects. And I think that's the point of prizes. It's not for us. That's such a like stereotypical thing to say, but like it isn't for us. And I think it should just be there to inspire people to do good work. And if the good work if we keep saying the only good work is, you know, overseas and in these life-threatening environments, it's just not as encouraging. I don't know what the judges' motivations are, though. You know, you can't drive yourself mad trying to figure it out.
Well, that's always like the key thing, right? You know, it's like, do we reward, you know, photographs or whatever our work is based on how hard it is to capture, or do we reward a bit on how good it is and how, you know, the story is trying to tell and the effectiveness of it? And you know, there can be absolutely awesome work that is captured in an afternoon in somebody's backyard, and, you know, is very important and timely and relevant. And there could be stuff where you have to travel halfway across the world, and you get shot at and almost die. And that's also could be relevant. So I think it really boils down to who are your judges, and that's going to come down to. If your judges understand that, they're going to be able to, you know, pick winners who they can recognize, hopefully, you know, are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and hopefully recognize the work that needs to be recognized.
I think one of the problems too is within the limitations that our awards have for photojournalism is that they award the same things. The World Press and the Pulitzer image literally are interchangeable 9 times out of 10. I mean, especially 2017, they were. You know, whether it be the finalist would win the top one, and we don't like. I work also in writing and in investigative journalism, and there's 1,000. There's IRE. There's there's the Hillman Awards, there's the Global Journalist Awards, there's a dozen for labor reporting, there's awards, there's all these different things. And that doesn't exist in photojournalism the way that it exists in print journalism. And so you could cover, say, like I'm looking at covering there's a Tennessee union strike potentially happening with auto workers down there, and I'm looking at covering that, and I could get the most amazing images, cover the most amazing story. It could be fascinating, it could be whatever. Not that I'm saying that I would, but I probably won't. But I could cover everything, and there's not a single award out there that it'll win. There just literally is not. I mean, maybe the MPPA, like there's an award in there because that is at least a little bit better. But I'm not going to win a Pulitzer on that. I just know that. I'm not going to win a World Press, any of the World Press images. And I mean, obviously that's not why I would cover the story or whatever, but it's not appreciating people to force people into that. It's one of the reasons why young photojournalists get embedded and go off to combat, is to kind of get some bona fides to come back into America then and cover whatever they're going to do. I see, you see that a lot, and absolutely nothing wrong with that. That was originally my goal line to do, and then I got caught up in domestic politics. I just know too much about, I like covering that too much, like hate, whatever. And so to me, I just think that we need, I've been trying to get, there within labor reporting, and investigative journalism, there's the Hillman Awards, and I've won one of they have a monthly and a yearly prize. I've won one of their monthly prizes, and I'm trying desperately to get them to do a photojournalism prize, because they literally just don't have it. There's a Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Award, and I think they have a single one best photo of the year sort of thing, and that's it. And so I think that we need to kind of reach out and try to get, there's a lot of really great investigative journalists, photojournalism happening that go along with things. I did a huge piece that won a global editors award or something, and the investigative journalism won it, the photography didn't. but I did the photography on that too, but they didn't even have a photojournalism end of things, and I think that we need to reach out that way, because I think that then something like a piece like the face transplant story will have better awards, and I think that we maybe eventually long term can. I don't want to take away a little bit of the heaviness of the Pulitzer and that sort of thing, because obviously it'll always be, it's still my goal. I still would love to. I'm never going to say I wouldn't love to win one, but I think that if there was something else you could win, especially, not to say that the prize money doesn't mean anything, and that's something that we all, especially when you're working on a story for your own and that sort of thing for months, whether it be a private project, because, whatever the day rate is, whatever the story fee that you get to cover a story, it never covers the cost. If you're working on a story for 6 months, unless you're staff, and even then, how often does staff, I can't, I don't think we've ever talked to a photojournalist that's been allowed to work on a story for 6 months. So, maybe there's
oh my gosh.
Well,
God willing. Well, I have been doing the Trump beat for 6 months.
Well, yeah.
Time, so I do kind of feel like there has been a.
Keep that going for another 2 years at least. 2 to 8 years. That's some. Well, Zach's camera feed has gone down, so I think that's the signal for us to end the show.
They're cutting us off. The internet.
That's right. So Zach's camera battery probably died, but anyways, that's going to end our this week's show. Before I let you go, Sarah, you did mention it earlier, but I'm going to mention it again. What your pick was this week?
Oh yeah, the 100 to 400 Sony. F whatever, but the 100 to 400 is a life-changing lens that does not have a small price tag, and I don't know if it'll end up being mine for real, but it is worth a look at least to try it out if you have access to that.
Yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely. Those super zooms are really good. I have a 1 to 300 for my GH5, and it's a great. You can reach out and touch somebody from a mile away, but Obviously, I don't use it all the time, but it is nice to have it. It's an intrinsic part of the kit. Need to keep it around as well as the 50 millimeter and the Holy Trinity. So yeah, definitely those super zooms have their place.
For sure.
Sarah, is there some place you would like to point us towards where we can find out more information about you or your work?
Sure. As is many of my colleagues' favorite outlet, especially here in Washington, I'm always on Instagram, always posting. And if anyone's listening and wants to reach out to me directly, I love DMing. I'm embarrassed to say how much time I spend on Instagram. It's my favorite thing. So
Hey.
anytime, any DMs are welcome.
All right, everybody DM Sarah right now.
Oh God, it's gonna be a flood.
Eh.
Well, you
Not so
never
much.
know.
All right, Around the Lens Army, go ahead and DM Sarah. Anyways, Zach, you got anything for us before we sign off?
Follow me on Instagram, ZD Roberts, as well, and on Twitter at ZD Roberts.
All right.
That's it.
Great.
Nothing interesting.
And as always, go to aroundthelens.com, your source for all the visual journalism stuff and links to all our social media, Patreon, and all that good fun stuff. Go support the show. At minimum, tell somebody about the show. So tell one person about the show. That's all I ask. Do that one thing for me, and you'll be my best friend forever. All right, well, that's been our show for this week. Again, I want to thank you, our guest, Sarah, for being on our show. I truly appreciate it. I do want to let everybody know who's going to be on next week really quick. If I can get the site to load. I've been having some website issues, so if you're seeing any issues, that's why there have been some website issues. But in episode 172 next week, you will get to see Joel Auerbach talking about his work. So check that out. Tune in April 29th for that show. All right. Again, thank you, Sarah, for being on our guest.
Of course.
You.
Always welcome back. For Zach Roberts, I'm David J. Murphy. This has been episode 171 of Around the Lens, and we are out. Thanks for tuning into Around the Lens. We hope you enjoyed the show and hope you'll join us next week. In the meantime, go to aroundthelens.com for show notes from tonight's episode, as well as links to our Patreon, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. We're also always looking for new and exciting guests to feature on each show, so if you know somebody who might be interested, let them know.